we are back. Welcome back, everybody. My name's Ryan. I wasn't here last episode. I was fighting academic demons, and now I'm not. So I'm back, and I'm joined by my usual co-host, Alex, and our producer, Zach, as well as a returning guest, friend of the Chroncast, Mr. Maayan Zilbershtein. Maayan, how are you doing?
I mean, it's great to be here, and it's great to have an easier way to mention me as you do in every episode this time around.
Yeah, this time we won't have to mention you because you will literally be here in the room with us. So yeah, I guess first order of business, Canucks last game, not good. Game before that, however, very good. So just, thoughts on the first two games of the playoffs and where the team's heading now.
Yeah, starting with game one, just really a great performance from the team. A little bit of a scare around the end of the second, I thought, but brought it back together really well in the third. What an atmosphere in the stadium, too. That was just great to see. Game two was one of the weirdest games I've watched as a fan in a long time, I think. Like, we played so much better than them, but just couldn't seem to get anything going, and I think that killed us. But I left that game still confident in our ability to win the series. I don't know about you guys, but I think even without the result, I think the way that we played inspired a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I thought that people were giving the team too much of a bad rap. I mean, a couple bad bounces and missed opportunities here and there, but overall, it was a really controlling game, and it was just a lot of bad puck luck. I guess props to Nashville for blocking, 50 shot attempts?
Something like that, just
shot
absurd.
The puck 85 times. It found found Saros 20 times. Found the net once. That's really, really good playoff defense there from Nashville. So it'll be interesting to see how the team adapts to that to create more open chances in game 3 and 4.
Yeah, and I think the number of nets we missed too on open opportunities was getting frustrating as a fan. I don't want to get on his case too much because I think he might be playing through an injury or something. I heard some people saying he was taping up his wrist around the start of the second period. If that's true, that's obviously a big thing. But Pettersson's net miss at the end of the first there was obviously quite frustrating. So I think if they can find a way to finish some of the chances they're getting and just play a little bit smarter on the puck on a few plays, there were some bad turnovers that cost us, I think, then I think we can easily take the series in maybe 6 games or something.
Yeah, and it sucks to see how that game played out for Elias Pettersson because it's just you can feel it. He's so close to just getting that confidence back, getting 1 or 2 goals and just hopefully becoming the player that we signed him to be, the player we know him to be, the player we want him to be. So just seeing, that net miss at the end there, it was just so unfortunate because he's not going to get many better chances than that to get his name back on the score sheet.
Yeah, and Elliot Friedman was talking about this on the Sportsnet broadcast during the game. I think part of what's going wrong, too, is he knows he's in a slump and he's trying to do so much to get out of it, which, it's great to see the effort level, but that's not really the way to break out. So he's doing these things wrong, and every time something goes wrong, he's going to try harder to fix it. When the shots finally start going in and he's able to kind of get the monkey off his back, I think things are going to start going really well for him. Excuse me. But until that, it's really frustrating to see what's going on with him. Completely not his fault. Slumps happen to everyone. It's just unfortunate timing.
Yeah. But you see how the whole team plays well when he's playing well and how different it is when he's not. You can say what you will about the Demko situation because it is unfortunate, and I think we'll lead into that after this. But when it comes to a game-breaking player for the Canucks, it's really just Elias Pettersson, I think.
I don't necessarily agree with just Elias Pettersson, but he's certainly one of the key ones. I think, you got to give the respect to guys like Quinn Hughes and Demko when he's healthy, but he's certainly one of the key players on the team, so I'm hoping to see the fans kind of rally around him when we're back at the stadium. I think they did a really good job of that. Maayan can maybe speak to this because he was in the arena for game 1 working on the popcorn sales, but I think the fans are really rallying around the team right now in a way we haven't seen in a while. Maayan, can you comment on that?
Yeah, it was insane. The player intros when they first skated onto the ice was, I've been to a lot of Whitecaps games over the years, obviously. I'd never experienced anything like this, and I'd never seen fans support a team as much as they do here. In this Canucks playoff game, obviously game 2 didn't go as well, but you could see that people really do care. After the game, people were climbing statues, and after one win in the playoffs, which, can be a bit controversial, but let's not get into that. yeah, it was really good to see. Like the atmosphere this year has just been pretty good overall in Rogers Arena, and that first game, especially when I was there, it was electric.
Yeah. And one thing I just want to quickly gush about how they did that game. Hearing Where the Streets Have No Name at Rogers Arena again was just such a sweet experience for me. Like, it's been 9 years since we've been able to host a playoff game. So long since we've heard that song played before a meaningful hockey game. So it's just nice to see that again. I think it really gets the arena going better than any song would. So it's nice to see the team recognize that and using it for such a big occasion.
Yeah, I was like, I had chills hearing that for the first time in 10 years. Like, even at in the 2015 playoffs, it wasn't like the same, like I don't think they used the same song. So I think bringing it back in that way after all that time was just like, it was such a good feeling.
Yeah.
And it really helps to create like one of the best atmospheres in the NHL.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, do we have any other Canucks related topics to talk about? We're moving pretty fast here.
Should we move on to talk about the Demko injury?
Yeah. Yes, let's talk about the Demko injury. It sounds like he's now been upgraded to week with another issue with the same knee that he's dealt with issues with this season. It's definitely very, very concerning seeing how vital Demko can be to keeping pucks out of our net, especially because I feel like our defense plays worse when he's not there. At least that's how the eye test has treated it this year. It feels like when Casey DeSmith is in net, the guys in front of him aren't playing as well, which which doesn't make any sense to me at all, because you would think that those guys would want to be playing their best when they don't have the same assurance with Thatcher Demko behind them. So huge task here for the Canucks to maybe go 1-2 playoff series without Thatcher Demko.
Yeah, just speaking to why the defense plays worse with DeSmith behind them versus Demko, I think Demko probably gives a little bit of extra confidence to the team in that they know they have a guy who can just make these miracle saves in the net for them, but it's definitely a challenge. From what I've heard, Demko is probably going to be out for the entire first round and a good chunk of the second round should we make it as it stands right now, but I don't think it's a death sentence like some people do. Like, I've heard people talking about how it's over, we cannot win anymore because we have Demko is our team, stuff like that. I really think that's quite, more than anything, disrespectful to a lot of the guys on the team. Guys like Quinn Hughes, guys like JT Miller, guys like even Dakota Joshua and Connor Garland, who can really make this team tick. Like, Demko is obviously one of our most important players, but to call him the team and to say that we cannot win a series because we don't have him, I strongly disagree with that. I think they showed it last night too. I wouldn't really put the goals, I wouldn't say DeSmith cost us the game. I would honestly be hard-pressed to say that Demko changes the result of game 2. So I really feel like even with a worse goalie in net than we could have, that this series is still takeable. It's more of a challenge now than it was before, but I'm confident that Casey DeSmith can get it done.
Yeah, I can definitely recall how 2 of the goals were scored, and the first one, I don't think any NHL goalie is going to get to that one. Like, that's just a really unfortunate bounce. Good tip by Beauvillier. Can't really fault DeSmith for that one.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he was a bit out of position, but just such an unfortunate bounce.
I think he maybe could have played the positioning better, but with the bounce it took, you'd be hard pressed to find anyone making that save, like you just said.
Yeah. And if he does make that save, it's a highlight reel save. So
yeah, of course.
You can't expect him to be making, Hasek level, like, stack in the pads type saves when stuff like that happens. And then I just remember that second goal, I think it was the Forsberg goal.
Yeah.
Where it was just a complete defensive implosion, just allowed him to walk in. Not many goalies in the league are going to stop Philip Forsberg from that range.
Yeah.
So just an unfortunate chances for DeSmith.
And then the third one off of that rough turnover from Pettersson, like this, DeSmith kind of got hung out to dry on that one. I think he did give up a pretty solid rebound there, but with the chance that Nashville had, not many goalies are going to be able to keep that one out of the net.
Yeah. So hoping that the defensive game will be a little bit sharper in game 3, despite the atmosphere in Nashville, and Nashville being historically one of the best playoff atmospheres, one of the hardest to play in as an away team. hoping that the team will be able to keep their composure a little bit better than game 2.
Yeah, some of the best chanting in the NHL in that building, almost like a soccer stadium with how creative some of it can get compared to other NHL chants. It's pretty cool to see, but hoping we can get through it right now. Like, I, again, firmly believe in this team. I think we showed throughout the first 2 games that we're definitely the better team in this series, but that atmosphere can change a lot of stuff. So one thing I'm hoping for, too, is, as we all know, Tyler Myers missed last game. He was out with what Talkett said was the flu. If he can be back next game, I do think that'll help things, because Maayan, I hate to say this to you, knowing you're a Noah Juulsen's #1 fan, he did not have the best of games in game 2. I think he looked like he was trying to do a little bit too much for his hometown team, which, full respect to him. I'd probably be doing the same in his situation, but he was trying to do a lot there. So someone like Myers, who's a little more experienced in playoff hockey and has a tendency to do pretty well in playoff games, I think should be a big help for that defense.
All right. So moving on, is there any other Canucks related stuff that you guys want to talk about?
I guess actually you guys touched on the goalies. So one thing I want to say, like, I know I don't know nearly as much as about hockey as you guys do, but at the end of the day, you've got to score the goals as well. Like, Canucks attempted like 80 something shots in game 2. Yeah, you conceded 4 goals, and of course some of the game blame can go on the goalie, but it doesn't matter if you don't score.
Well, like we were saying, I don't think DeSmith is to blame. I think 2-3 of those goals were more so defensive implosions than anything. One of them was a bad bounce. Just like, I think if you have if you can get the Canucks defense playing the way that they were, and especially the first half of the season, I think we can beat any team with any of our goalies, as demonstrated in the back half of the season with like the Edmonton game and the Vegas game when DeSmith was in for Demko. There are a lot of the best teams in the league. We can beat them with Casey DeSmith in net. It just comes down to having a good performance from the defense. And I agree with you on the shot attempt thing. It'll be interesting to see how they adapt to create more open chances against Nashville after Nashville blocked like 50, 60 shots in one game.
Yeah. I do think part of that, too, comes down to there were a lot of plays where you notice guys were holding the puck for a little bit of time before shooting, which is giving Nashville a chance to block the shooting lanes. We got to be a little quicker on the draw, I think. If we can get those shots off faster, we're at least going to be able to test Saros with them a little more. Saros also had quite a good game last night, or 2 nights ago, excuse me. So I do think that is part of it. He played quite well, but we need to test him more.
He was fantastic.
Yeah.
Saros was fantastic. I remember that. What was it? That one chance where it came back off the boards and he just lunged back and got it with his toe. Yeah, like he was really, really, really good in that second game.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And just like one more thing I'd like to touch on before we maybe move off of this. The Elias Lindholm line with Connor Garland and Dakota Joshua.
Mm-hmm.
I know Lindholm did not have the best regular season performances in his time in Vancouver. I've really liked that line so far through 2 games. I think he's a really good addition to it. I think putting just about anyone between Garland and Joshua is going to get good performances out of them with how well they play together and how energetic they are, but I think that's a really good line both ways, especially with how they all play. So I'm excited to see how that can go going forward with those 3 together. Lindholm obviously scored our first goal of the postseason off of a really nice shot, so I'm really hoping that we can keep them together and get them going in a way that we haven't seen Lindholm able to play so far in Vancouver.
Yeah. All right, well, with that, I don't think that we have anything else to say about the Canucks. Game 3 is at the time of recording tomorrow. Hopefully this will be up before that. And yeah, what are you guys hoping to get out of Game 3 that we didn't see in Game 2?
Well, a win, first of all. But
Thank
really
you.
just hoping that we can get better, more like high-quality chances, test Saros more, and be a little quicker off the draw with the shots, like I've been saying. Just, even if you're not going to score everyone, don't get as many shots blocked and be able to test Saros as much as you can.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for the Canucks will be having to figure out that Nashville defense, that shot blocking, and once they figure that out, figuring out Yusei Saros. But yeah, moving on, we are going to talk about the Whitecaps, so I guess this is a good time for our guest to do a little bit of heavy lifting, so I'm going to pass it to Maayan.
All right. Well, I guess first thing we can talk about is what was announced just this morning and some controversy around it. With the Whitecaps playing a friendly against Wrexham. Ryan Reynolds is Wrexham. BC plays on July 27th. The tickets are about $100. That's the cheapest ticket you can get. Apparently, the Whitecaps aren't even considered the hosts of this game. Rather, it's just a Wrexham home game, but at BC Place, which is the Whitecaps' usual home stadium, except for obviously one exception that we had earlier this year. I know I'm not going to go to this game. I don't really know how many people that I know or many actual Whitecaps fans will be going to this game because the tickets for it cost about a third of our season tickets. And I guess it's good for exposure, because there is a lot of attention around Wrexham in general because of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney being the two owners and the story that they're trying to create, even though I really don't think it's as cool of a story as everyone makes it out to be. But that's something else that can be discussed another time. Yeah, I think it can be good for exposure, but it is also 3 days before the Whitecaps play away at LAFC in the Leagues Cup. So I don't know how strong of a lineup the Whitecaps will put out. I don't know how much they'll care about it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, with that being said about the LAFC game, I wasn't aware of this. I'm assuming they'll probably not be icing the strongest of lineups. And it'll be interesting to see how attendance does, because I don't think that outside of the footballing world, a lot of people really know the story of Wrexham. And it'll be interesting to see how it's promoted too.
Yeah, like a game like this does seem like it would be a big opportunity for the Whitecaps because Wrexham have obviously become a pretty big name off the backs of their owners, but you got to make better ticket prices for an opportunity like this. I think this is the kind of game where you can get a lot of people who are not necessarily Whitecaps fans in the building because of kind of the novelty of the event and maybe make fans of them, but when you're selling tickets for $100, that's, for the cheapest tickets especially, that's not really going to do much for you. And right before we start a competition like the Leagues Cup, I'm not really a fan of the Leagues Cup's mere existence, so I'm not too fussed about it, but there are people who will take it more seriously than me and say we need to be trying to win it, I'm sure. So I don't know, this just kind of seems like, I was really excited when this got announced. I was really looking forward to going to this, but unless ticket prices drop, will probably not be attending. Yeah.
I mean, there's another event that's happening exactly a month from now that will be a very, very good way for the Whitecaps to
is there? I've never heard of
hopefully... Yeah, no. Exactly a month from today, Inter Miami, Lionel Messi, if he plays.
Who?
Exactly. Argentine Ryan Gold.
That guy.
Yeah. But yeah, if you guys don't have anything else to say about the Wrexham game,
I got one more thing I'd like to say. I can't believe you guys aren't excited to watch a third-tier team play the fourth most popular team in their own city as an away team, where it seems like it's this slapdash mess played 3 days before a game that actually might matter for the season. So I can't believe you guys are not in any way excited for this.
It feels like this is kind of unexpected, almost. Like, the Whitecaps aren't the type of team to be playing, at least from my experience, preseason friendlies against European sides, no matter the division that they're in.
Well, not even preseason for the Whitecaps. It's mid-season.
Well, I mean, playing in their preseason friendlies.
Yeah.
It's also really funny that Wrexham are playing here because no other League One team really does North American tours for their preseason. So it'll be interesting to see how even a team of Whitecaps reserves fares against a League One team. So yeah, I don't really have any expectations or hopes for that game, and I think it's more of a tourist attraction than an actual game that people are looking forward to. Are you guys gonna watch it if it's televised?
Yeah, good chance. Just depends on kind of ease of access, really.
Yeah.
Well, knowing the Whitecaps
is like on the MLS season pass, which I'm not sure if it will be, then I'll watch it. Why not?
Knowing the Whitecaps, it'll be on like Fubo or something.
Well, I got that too, so we're good.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. That's not really an issue.
Can be broadcast on YouTube exclusively in the United Kingdom.
And Maayan, do you know if it'll be the whole BC Place that they're selling tickets for, or just the lower bowl?
I'm assuming they'll just see how tickets go for the lower bowl and then go from there, because I think it's just like 2 minutes ago, ticket sales were opened up to the public. Beforehand, it was just pre-sales for like season ticket members and a bunch of other things. So I guess we'll just see how that goes and go from there. I guess now we can talk about Whitecaps games that have happened and that matter and will happen.
Yes.
I guess
seems to make sense.
You guys briefly talked about the game in Seattle. 2-0 win in Seattle. You'd love to see it. And although Seattle are struggling to start the season, like their only win this season was a 5-0 thrashing of CF Montreal, they're still a good team. They're a good team on paper, and they only have one real injury, and that is Pedro de la Vega, their new DP signing, who got re-injured, and I think is going to be out for another 4 weeks or so, or maybe even more. But yeah, the Seattle team is still a good team, and even before they went down to 10 and eventually 9 men, I think the Whitecaps were the better team on the ball, off the ball, generated 1 or 2 solid chances in the first half, and then Jackson Reagan stomped on Ryan Gauld's calf in what, according to Seattle Sounders fans, was just a push, and nothing more than that. Because I
don't think it was a push, but I also don't think it was intentional.
No, I'm not saying it was intentional, but it's a reckless foul, and there's contact made with the studs on Gauld's calf, and when you see those things, you kind of have to give a red card. And it was cool to hear the in-stadium announcement from the referee for the first ever time.
Yeah. And then the following groans of all the Seattle fans.
And what I found really funny was when Alex Roldan came in from behind on Ali Ahmed, and what he did was basically just, it looked like he was trying to break his leg. The Sounders fans started chanting "Ref, you suck" after he gave a red for that.
Well, I'm glad that such a distinguished and respected franchise in the world of football with such beloved supporters who come up with the most original and beloved chants are the most intelligent of football fans.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All I can really say about the Sounders' performance in that game was they probably should have fought a little bit more if they wanted to win.
Greatest chant of all time.
I mean, in fairness, they were trying to fight, just not for a win.
Yeah, no, they were trying to fight, but that's just because they thought they were playing a different sport.
They wanted the belt, not the win.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see who's trying to fight when Zach Mason and potentially myself are in attendance for the next Seattle away trip.
This is a pretty big guy too. Come on, don't count him out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying Zach Mason is the one who has a combat corner.
That's very true. Yeah.
I help with it sometimes, sort of, ish, not really.
All right, then.
But anyway, moving on from that, Maayan, big game for the Caps coming up. Do you want to talk about that one too?
Oh, of
one
course.
That actually matters too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in 2 days, on Saturday, the Whitecaps play away at New York Red Bulls. A friend of ours, a member of Vancouver Albion, Isaac Henry, will be in attendance. I think he just made it to New York this morning. New York Red Bulls have been one of the best teams in the league so far. Super fun to watch. They have another good Forsberg who doesn't. I highly doubt is related to Philip.
Common name, I doubt it.
Yeah. So his name is Emil Forsberg. He is a very, very good player. He's been great in their midfield, and they just had a really good attack as well. Dante Van Zimmer, although he got suspended for making some racist comments last season, is now back and he's now playing well. Lewis Morgan, another top attacker who missed out on most of last year due to injury, he's back and he's banging in goals. He scored a hat-trick against Inter Miami, and yeah, it's going to be a really good test for the Caps away against one of the best teams in the league so far this year. With Andres Kubas as well, who's out for yellow card accumulation. And we don't know yet if Fafa Picault is ready to go or not. I think he is training fully, so it'll be interesting to see if he's good to go. Yeah, I guess now I can move on to talking a bit about the start of the Canadian Premier League season. Just a few comments here and there. First of all, we all currently at least live in BC. The top two of the top three teams in the CPL right now are BC. Ryan is currently holding up a Forge FC kit that he somehow had right next to him. So Forge are second in the league. First are Vancouver FC, who I don't want to call them Vancouver. They are a Langley team. They play in Langley. They got about
We don't claim Langley.
And to be fair, their first two games of the season have been Valor, who is, to me, on paper, by far the worst team in the league, and Halifax, who came off a 1-0 loss to Pacific FC beforehand, who Pacific FC are third in the league right now. All three of those teams have won their first two games. Then you've got Atletico Ottawa with a win and a draw, team that looks like they can be the best team in the league after all the signings they've made. They've signed some of the best players within the league, like Amir Didic, the center back, and Manny Aparicio in midfield. But yeah, right now it looks like BC teams are doing pretty well for themselves. Vancouver FC, after just completely revitalizing their team in Pacific, I don't really get how, but I guess they're doing their thing. I didn't think they would be, but it is. And bottom of the table, the bottom two teams are in fact York United in 7th and Fowler in 8th. Ryan, you've been to York United home game.
I have. I'm surprised that they are still considered York United home games, as they tend to feel like neutral venues. So I went to the Whitecaps. Well, this is actually probably a good segue into the Canadian Championship. We could talk about this after. But I went to the Whitecaps versus York United Canadian Championship game in May of last year. And for context, York United Stadium fits about 5,000 people. I think there's like 10 sections in their main stand. One section was entirely full of Whitecaps like player family members and friends. Shout out the Allier fan club. That was it was fun being in what felt like a supporter section entirely cheering for one player, but it was just York has like maybe 15 dedicated fans in their little supporter section. You'll see with like their drums and their noisemakers. They were honestly no dissing at all to them, because they were lovely people. Some of the nicest opposition fans I had met at a sporting event were the few and far between York United supporters in the supporter section. And I guess their marketing strategy is interesting because they play on the York University Lions Stadium. So they play at the York campus. And a lot of their ticketing discounts and promotions are geared towards getting university students in the stands, which I think Pacific FC could benefit a lot from doing something similar, because they had a booth at a UVic like Spirit event day thing at the start of the year, but they haven't really been advertising buying tickets at all. But say York United, for example, I know they have like a discount on tickets and $5 beers if you're a student at York.
And
Pacific could benefit. Yeah, Pacific could benefit from that a lot. And yeah, it was really interesting to see how York was doing. So I believe this game was like 3 days after they were sold back to Canada Soccer. So it's interesting to see how
thing with their owners, and
it's interesting to see how York is surviving, seeing as they've been struggling a lot with attendance to the point where they're almost giving out tickets.
But yeah, I guess now we can talk about the Canadian Championship.
Yes, Canadian Championship.
So far there's only been 2 games in the competition. On Tuesday, Cavalry beat the team from Langley 1-0, and that means that's the team the Whitecaps will play in the 2-legged series. First leg will be away at Cavalry Stadium on May 7th. Second leg will be at BC Place on May 21st. I might be going to the game in Calgary. I'm not sure of it yet. I'll see how that goes. And then yesterday, Toronto FC played against Simcoe County Rovers from League One Ontario, and they beat them 5-0.
My beloved Simcoe County Rovers.
They played a somewhat rotated lineup, but also had a lot of actual starters in their team. And Prince Owusu, who kind of struggled to start this year. Now has 4 goals in his last 3 games. That's good for him. And yeah, I mean, it's tough to see Simcoe County Rovers knocked out, but we get to see another League One Canada team in action next week as TSS Rovers replace Victoria Highlanders after they were supposed to compete, and they will be away at Pacific FC next week. That'll be a fun one to see.
That game
Rovers
is on
already
May
played
1st,
it.
correct?
Yeah, May 1st.
I may or may not be there.
You should go there. Please do.
I would also just like to mention 17-year-old, I believe, Andre Dumitru made his TFC first team debut last night. He is a good friend of a lot of my close friends because they went to high school together. So, new friend of the Chroncast, even though he doesn't know I exist. And I have met him approximately 0 times. But just shout out 17-year-old Andre Dumitru for making his TFC first team debut yesterday for TFC.
You'd love to see
against Simcoe.
You'd love to see it.
Maayan, just going to ask you one more soccer-related question before I move on to other sports. The Canadian men's national team seem to be inching closer towards finding a permanent manager. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So we had the rumors of Frank Lampard a week or so ago. That has died down very quickly, but apparently they were.
Thank God.
Apparently they had reached out to him and he declined an interview. And there's a report that came out today saying the same thing happened with Jose Mourinho. He did not accept an interview. But a few candidates that have interviewed or will interview in the future, one of them is Bobby Smirniotis, who is the head coach of Forge FC. I'm not sure how I'd feel about that, just because it's a Canadian Premier League manager, but it is what it is. You know, he's still a pretty good coach for the level he's coaching at.
Yeah,
he's dominated the CPL. Bobby,
Forge have dominated the CPL ever since leagues existed.
Well, it's just
another candidate
simple. They're the biggest club in Canada. Anyways, continue.
Okay.
It's actually Altitude FC, but we'll move on.
Jesse Marsh, the American, is another candidate. And, I mean, he's coached at pretty high levels. It'll be interesting. If he's the one that gets the job, it'll be interesting to see how his kind of style that he's always played translates over to Canada. He plays very Red Bull style of soccer, which is just a lot of high energetic, high press. So if he gets the job, I don't think I'd mind it too much. I think he's a pretty solid candidate, and I mean he's coached at very high levels. He's coached in the Premier League. So yeah, and another guy who's coached in the Premier League and is a candidate here is former Manchester United boss, who I don't think has had a job since he got fired from there. It's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, former United player as well. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know about this, so excuse me while I mute my mic and laugh. Nope.
Yeah, it's certainly an option. Let's move on.
Yeah, I won't be polite. I'm not in the mood to be polite right now. If the Canadian national team hires Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I'm going to take a long walk off a short pier. I think you two would understand.
That's interesting.
I'm joining you.
I don't know if I am just going to stay here and enjoy the ride.
Part of this is that I support Liverpool and I hate Solskjaer, but I kind of love him because he was just charity for Liverpool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how I
just
feel
like
about
Jurgen Klopp is to Everton.
Yeah, but I don't think he's that bad of a coach. He got to the Champions League with United. Obviously, he had a lot of great players on his squad, which there aren't too many of at Canada, other than, obviously Davies, David, and then Cannon, Eustachio, and a few others. But it's an interesting list. I think there were a few other names that have been mostly assistant coaches at times. One of them was the head coach of Maccabi Tel Aviv, the Israeli club, in 2020. So that's a very interesting one. But yeah, I think that's all I have on our soccer segment for today.
Who do you want to be our bench boss?
I don't know. I've been trying to think about it and trying to figure out like an answer for myself, but I really don't know who prefer the options that we have listed.
I think my preference of the ones we've got listed is Mourinho, but if that seems unrealistic from the beginning. No. I'm glad we asked. Worst thing he could have said was no, so I'm glad we asked. But I'm a fan of Marsh. I think he would be a cool hire. I would be interested to see how he would be received as an American coming in to manage Canada, but I don't really have an issue with that personally. Others may disagree with me, but
yeah, I mean, very often the coach of a national team isn't actually from that country. I don't see why why it should be a problem that it's an American rather than John Herdman, who coached the country for a long time, was born in England, in a small village in England, which actually ironically is also where the women's national team coach Bev Priestman is from. They're from the same town, which is
maybe we need to go back to that village and find someone.
I think so. Yeah. But
it'll be interesting to see. All right, moving on from that, let's go talk about the better football now. The NFL draft begins tonight.
I am very scared. I am very scared.
So we read your thoughts off of a text last night, but we didn't get it, or last episode, excuse me. We didn't really get too much detail from you. Can we get a little bit of more detailed explanation about how you're feeling going into the draft, Patriot Boy?
All right, so the Patriots have the 3rd overall pick as well as the 34th overall pick, and quite frankly, I am bricks. It sounds like the Patriots are going to draft a quarterback, which in theory is a good idea because, they need one. They need a quarterback. They also need a wide receiver, and probably every other position in their lineup could use an upgrade, whether it's first or second string. But the problem I have with it is it seems to be like the Patriots are going to draft a quarterback who I would put on potential bust watch. I'm getting Josh Rosen vibes in particular from Drake May. I never have a good feeling about, quarterbacks when they're, strawberries. I'm not sure I'm supposed to say I don't want a white quarterback on my team. I get a bad feeling. Anyways, continuing. Yeah, I don't know. I something about Drake May just feels off. And then there's obviously the rumor that JJ McCarthy is going to be a first-round pick. And as a Michigan fan, it warms my heart to see this. But as a Patriots fan, I am really hoping that JJ McCarthy can go on and be a starting quarterback in the first couple of years somewhere else. Because I, again, don't think he has the potential, will live up to the potential that he seems to be advertised as to have. So yeah, I'm really, really anxious and also excited to see what happens with our 3rd overall pick tonight.
So let's say, hypothetically, Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels go off the board with the first 2 picks. New England's on the clock. If they can't trade down, who do you want them taking right there?
I think, again, as a Michigan fan...
If not a specific player, then, what position?
Again, I think you take the best player available, but in that situation, I think, and it sucks as a Michigan fan to say, but I kind of want Maserati Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State, the wide receiver. Because as much as they've struggled with Mac Jones at quarterback, the argument that he hasn't had weapons at receiver has been, it definitely has quite a few different
Yeah, fair enough. I just want to quickly mention, I talked last week about who I want the Seahawks to take. I'm just going to quickly talk about my college fandom. I'm just really hoping we can see Michael Penix go somewhere good. I'd like to see him be a day 1 pick if he can. I think he really deserves it. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in this draft and that he will prove it to any team that takes him. So I'm hoping someone takes the risk and gets him in round 1. If not, then I think he's going to be really great value as a day 2 pick if that's where he ends up going. Yeah. No, I could honestly see that. I feel like we are good to move on from the NFL draft there, so we will begin moving into everyone's favorite segment, the Zach Mason Combat Corner. Zach, are we ready to go?
Yes, I have only 2 fights I'd like to talk about this week.
As we lose Ryan.
Only 2 fights I'd like to talk about this week, both in boxing. The first one is Saul Canelo Alvarez facing Jaime Munguia in Las Vegas on May the 4th. Cinco de Mayo weekend, as is usual for Canelo.
Yep.
I'm honestly kind of a fan of this fight. I know it's not the fight with David Benavidez that everyone wanted, But I'll come back to that later. So Canelo's going to obviously be the massive favorite because he's the biggest star in the sport. Probably one of the 5 best boxers even right now active. And he's the undisputed super middleweight champion for a reason. The only way I can see Munguia having a chance of winning is that Canelo it's his 65th career fight. And there's almost certainly a chance that it can go wrong for him and he can get old overnight because he's been boxing since he was 15 years old. He's moved up close to 35 pounds now. And all the 65 fight camps, God knows how many rounds in sparring and in fights, it can catch up to you. And I think we're starting to see it a little bit because he's settled into a one punch at a time style strategy where he's not throwing the very quick combinations that he'd throw at 154 or even 160 at times. It's all a big sledgehammer counter right type of thing, which it's worked, but it's also not really gotten many stoppages in the last few fights. Whereas, it was, in fairness, against guys like John Ryder, who's as tough as a $2 steak, but it's not lending any evidence against people who are saying he's already started to decline. And Munguia is absolutely there to be hit by those single shots, but also he's training under Freddie Roach now, and what I saw in the John Ryder fight for Munguia, where he was the first person to ever stop John Ryder, is he's an offensive dynamo, which is Freddie Roach's specialty. So if he can keep the offense going, there is an entirely possible where he beats a version of Canelo. It may not be the best version, but it's possible that he beats one. And I can totally see a world, this is going to sound like a hot take, but I can totally see a world where Canelo looks worse against Jaime Munguia than he does against David Benavidez. Because Munguia, he operates at slightly further range. He's a slightly more polished boxer. So there's more challenge for Canelo to get into the inside because he's not going to out-jab Jaime Munguia at 5'7". He's going to want to be getting inside the jab, getting close range, be able to mix in some body shots, some head shots, all like winging hooks. Get his full arsenal punches available. That's what he's going to want to do. And Munguia will want to fight longer, whereas David Benavidez, one, is probably just as willing to trade, but also is sloppier. Like, he'll throw a lot of wrong foot punches, like he'll move his left foot forward with his right hand, and he'll flurry a lot, and also his defense might even be worse than Munguia's, because he'll just kind of shell up in a high guard that's not exactly the tightest, so he'll just put his hands up above his head, and there's plenty of openings, and I don't really know how much there'll be there that Canelo hasn't seen before that he can exploit. And I don't think either will win, but I can see a world where Munguia has a better performance than Benavidez, despite the fact that everyone's clamoring to see the Benavidez fight.
Yeah. No, it should be an interesting one for sure. But as we move on from that one, talk about one of your favorite fighters in the world, Naoya Inoue. Excuse me.
Yes.
The Japanese world champion. His upcoming fight. Get a preview of that?
For those who don't know, I'd probably have Naoya Inoue as the best pound for pound Naoya Inoue, pound for pound number one fighter, 4-weight world champion, 2-time undisputed world champion at 118 and 122 pounds respectively. He is, I'd probably say, the best mix of power, speed, and technique in the sport, because he is an impeccable boxer, and everyone always associates him as a puncher. Like, you can see in the Stephen Fulton fight, he won every round boxing and then stops him in the 8th. He's got power. Just look at the knockouts of Juan Carlos Payano, Manny Rodriguez, Nonito Donaire in the second fight. And I think he's starting to find his limit weight class wise, which is irritating for all the people who say he's not worth anything until he fights Tank Davis at 15 pounds heavier. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. He's fighting Luis Nery, who is a former 2-time world champion in 2 weight classes. He is also probably the closest thing to an antichrist Japanese boxing has. Because for those who don't know, his first world title fight was against a man by the name of Shinsuke Yamanaka. Yamanaka was a long-reigning WBC 118-pound champion. He was, in fact, 1 title defense away from breaking an elusive and also very cursed record, which is Yoko Gushkin's world title defense record for a Japanese fighter. This was Yamanaka's 13th title defense, and the record is also 13. So Luis Nery stops Yamanaka in 4 pounds, then tests positive for a drug used to cut weight. So he loses that title, and it's turned into, I believe it was a no contest. and it is then eventually ordered to have a rematch where he comes in 5 pounds overweight, knocks out Yamanaka in 2 rounds, and then celebrates like he's just won the world title. This resulted in him being banned for life by the Japanese Boxing Commission, and he promptly moved up to 122 pounds. So this was annoying because Naoya Inoue was on record as wanting to fight him for revenge, and this was back in 2018. So this fight's been about 6 years in the making. So it's nice to see Inoue finally get a chance at a point where he's probably even better. I don't even think he had won the World Boxing Super Series yet at the point this was happening. And now he's the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He might be the best Japanese fighter ever, and he still has a good 4 years of prime left in him. So it'll be intriguing to see. And just off the back of the villain in Nery and like the clean-cut superstar of Japan in Naoya Inoue, they've set this fight in the Tokyo Dome. Now, the last boxing match to take place in the Tokyo Dome, which is where the Yomiuri Giants of the NPB play, the last fight to take place there was a little-known heavyweight title fight between Mike Tyson and Buster Douglas. So it's been about 35 years since it happened. It's a 60,000-seat arena, I believe, for boxing events. So that just shows how big the star power of Inoue is right now. Like I think he genuinely might be one of the most famous people in Japan, and I think he's kind of indirectly prompted a golden age in Japanese boxing, because I saw this stat earlier that they have the second most world champions of anyone currently in the sport of boxing. And you got like guys of Inoue's age, like early 30s, like him, his brother Takuma, Kazuto Ioka. And then you got some younger guys who are coming up who look very good, like the Shigeoka brothers and Junko Nakatani. So I'm intrigued to see how this fight plays out. I think Inoue is deservedly the very big favorite, and I don't really see many ways for Nery to win, because Inoue's got a fantastic boxing ability. He's got a hell of a chin. Just look at his first fight with Nonito Donaire. He can box well, and the extra personal aspect of just the whole disrespect of both missing weight and the drug fail. I don't think it'll end well for Nery, and if you want more proof of what happens when Inoue takes a fight personally, just look at his fight with Manny Rodriguez. And the only thing in comparison was he just had a coach shove his dad. So if he's disrespected an entire nation, I can only imagine he wants it even more than before. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Yeah. Should be an interesting fight for sure. Anything else you want to bring up, or should we cut the ZMCC
I think that's pretty much it. I think I touched on all I wanted to say.
Cool. Before we leave, we have lost both of our other co-hosts for now, but we should quickly touch on the Chinese Grand Prix and some other news in F1 recently. Just 2 topics I want to bring up. 1, how is Lance Stroll still in F1? Like, I get that his dad owned the team, but at a certain point, like, so for those unaware, Lance Stroll crashed into Daniel Ricciardo, ruined his race, blamed Daniel Ricciardo for the incident when Lance was absolutely at fault. He's the only Canadian in F1, so part of me wants to like him as a Canadian, but oh my god, he is so hard to support sometimes.
Yeah, I think he's been kind of screwed over just by the upbringing he had in a way, because he had a very good amateur pedigree, but then the problem is that he didn't get a chance to polish it in F2. I think he jumped straight from Formula 3, it might have been just regional Formula 3, straight into F1. And there's a big gap in there, so he hasn't had a lot of time to develop, and he's kind of had a baptism by fire. And he's really not helping himself with how he just always seems to be looking in the wrong spot and shutting the door when someone's trying to get in.
And this one wasn't even the mirrors. Like, your one job going into a corner like that is to look at the car in front of you, and he was completely looking at the corner and blames Daniel for having the inside line, effectively. So, just something frustrating that I want to bring up. Daniel was also having a good race, and he's in a point right now that may decide his future in F1 for good with some of his performances lately, so I'm just quite I'm a Daniel fan too, so I'm kind of pissed off by this, but yeah, I'm just not happy about that. Moving on from that, though, it seems likely that Adrian Newey may be leaving the Red Bull program in the near future. Zach, you're more of an F1 guy than me. You've been watching the sport for a lot longer, so you would probably be more familiar with what this could mean for the sport going forward.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So for those who don't know, Adrian Newey is the chief car designer, essentially, for Red Bull. And, you know, I'd say he's pretty good at his job, given he's designed cars that have won 6 world championships just for Red Bull. That's not even including his career at McLaren and Williams. So it'll be very interesting to see where he goes, because I bet he could get enough gold to fill up a small room if he wanted to from any team. And I think he left because Red Bull seems to be in a bit of chaos right now. Like there's the whole allegations around Christian Horner, and I think there's a bit of a power struggle inside the top of the organization. I believe that's been cited as a reason he left.
Appear that way from the outside. Yeah. Interesting to see where this goes. But I think with that, we are out of things to talk about. So, Zach, you want to take us home?
Yep. Thank you to Maayan Zilbershtein for coming on with us. Good to have Ryan Gurevitz back after he was searching for his father in the United States Northwest. And listen to the next episode of the Chroncast and look both ways before you cross the street. Goodbye, everybody.